Have you ever wondered why the rich get richer and others don't? Could it be that a small percentage of the population seek out others to find, study, and execute on legal loopholes that exist within our financial life and make it easier for them to prosper? The answer is a resounding yes. This is the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. John has spent a lifetime researching and mastering the financial loopholes that he believes should be available to everyone. Join us as we explore different strategies that help you get farther faster towards building and enjoying a prosperous retirement.
Hello and welcome to the Secrets of the Wealthy with John Mintz. John, how are you?
Well, it is the middle of February and it's about 75 degrees and sunny outside. So on that note, I'm doing really good. How about you?
You just had to rub that in, didn't you? Because it's not 75 and sunny outside where I'm at.
Oh, no. Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I mean, we live where we live, right? Everybody's
right.
in their own situation. At least it's not, completely frozen up here. So that's good. That's a good thing. All right. Well, what are we talking about today?
Well, I want to start by saying that today is February 11th, and I usually don't make it a point to say that during the show, but we're in the studio recording this live today, but probably won't make its way onto the internet for a few weeks. And so I want people to just have a reference point of when we recorded this, because we are going to be talking about some key data points as of today during this show. So that being said, we're going to be talking about, is there a market collapse imminent?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of folks believe that and feel that, but are they going off of emotions or are they going off of logic? And some people would be going what they think is emotional logic. And I don't know that that's really, I think that's an oxymoron. I don't think those two words can go together, but this podcast is called The Secrets of the Wealthy. And in a future podcast, in one of the shows or multiple shows, I'm going to be talking about, it's going to be really fun, but we're going to talk about habits of the wealthy. There's been lots of books written about that, right? And it seems like every one of them is a bestseller. But there is a lot of truth to it.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Robbins, who is success beyond success in many different ways, has said more than once that he believes the secret is to, if you want success in anything, go find someone that's already doing it and just follow that path, right? And chances are high you'll end up the same way. And so we're going to talk about the habits of the wealthy. And one of those habits is they do not make any major decisions based on emotion. In most cases, they're using this age-old thing that seems to be a lost art called common sense.
Mm-hmm.
Some people call it logic, but never, ever emotional logic. There is no such thing as emotional logic. Logic has no emotion. And it's like numbers have no emotion. It is what it is, right? Mm-hmm. Numbers don't lie. So back to the original point is a market collapse imminent? So I want you to try to help me with this today, Eric. So, what are you? And we didn't talk before we got on this show today. But what are you hearing others, friends, family, members, acquaintances? What are you hearing them say about what's going on out there, and where they think the markets may or may not go, or do you even have those conversations?
It's funny you ask that because it's not that I try to avoid those conversations, because I don't. I mean, it'll come up in passing here and there, and something will key in on another subject, right? It'll lead to it. So here's a couple of things that I've heard and I've had discussions about. Mm-hmm. Taxes have to go up because of all the money that's been, all the stimulus that's been spent, all the money that the government's spending. So we know taxes have to go up. Mm-hmm. Interest rates have to go up because, well, they really can't go down any further than they have been for a very long time. The housing market bubble is going to pop because there's concern about that. We've been on such a good run. Besides the blip during COVID, we've been on such a good run for so many years. What goes up has to come down, right? Of course, they're talking about the market. Well, okay, but all of it's speculation. And cryptocurrency is another thing. They're like, well, this is going to take over the world, and then the paper dollar is not going to be worth anything, and blah blah blah. Okay, There's so much out there. I mean, that's why I try to avoid these conversations, John, because it's not like my input has anything.
That's absolutely perfect. You couldn't have said it any better. And because I think you feel the same way most folks feel. Like, I guess I'll check my statement when it comes in next month. And if it's up, great. If it's not, if it's down, I'll just not look at it that month. I actually hear people say that. They tell me that. And I think, really, is that your way of dealing with the down market? Is to just put your head in the sand and just believe it's not happening, even though it really is. And so, I've started asking folks, if you have an advisor, what is your advisor's warning sign that tells him or her to get you out of the market? And if you don't have an advisor, what's your warning sign? And if I ask folks that, and they do have an advisor, more times than not, I hear, well, when I've asked him that in the past, he's told me, well, we're just going to ride it out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm about to go through some logic here today. And I think if you're over 50 years of age and you're in the markets, of any significance at all, and you hear ride it out, you need to run away from that person.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think, let me just go through the logic, and I think it'll make a lot more sense. And I'm not saying that what I'm covering today is for everyone, but I think if you're close to retirement or you're in retirement, it's for you. Mm-hmm. So let's just kind of talk through some of these historical data points and what they may or may not mean to you. So let's just start with the fact that we are on a 13-year bull run. Now, if we just think logically for a minute, this is the longest, by a long shot, the longest bull market meaning increasing, good, mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. It's the longest bull market run ever in the history of the markets by a long shot. Mm. We've never gone this far. I think 9 years was previous record. There's 13 now. We've never gone this far without some sort of significant crash or correction. So that in and of itself should be enough logic, but it's not, okay? You've heard me talk about the Shiller Pe Ratio before. If you just Google that, Shiller Pe Ratio, you'll come up with a chart, and it will show you the history of this chart. And basically, it's a measurement of stocks, the S&P 500, being mm-hmm. either undervalued or overvalued. So in January 1st of 2000, that number was at 43.77. Now, anytime that number gets north of 30, nothing but bad has happened in the following decade, okay? I'm just saying history, right? Anytime that number gets below 20, the next decade is historically very good. Every single time, by the way, every time. So in January 1st of 2000, that number was 43. We know what happened after that. In January 1st of 2009, that number was 15. Okay? Well, that was the beginning of this 13-year bull run. January 1st of the current year, the number's 39.63. Almost the same as it was in the beginning of 2000, which is the beginning of two crashes. So, again, this is just history and logic we're talking about here, but that's not enough. Let's keep going. Now, you mentioned it earlier, but we've had this massive amount of stimulus spending mm-hmm. pouring into these markets, right? And that pretty much looks like it's done now. We had the infrastructure bill, we've had the COVID relief bills, all that money's poured in, and it looks to be running out. And doesn't look like the Build Back Better bill is going to make its way to the finish line now. So all of a sudden, this excess money is going to run out. And so the markets are going to have to rely on good old-fashioned fundamentals now, which I think you're going to see here in a minute. There's not much in the way of fundamentals left. Inflation. Let's talk about that inflation for a minute. So The difference between wholesale and retail inflation, a lot of folks don't know the difference between those two, right?
Okay.
Have you ever heard the difference between those two before?
No, I was just going to ask you for the definition of that.
Yeah. So retail inflation is what the cost of goods to you, me, everyone else. Wholesale inflation is the cost of goods at the middleman before it makes it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so it's a leading indicator, if you will, because it's got to make its way to the middleman first. Then it makes its way to us, right? And so whatever inflation is for the wholesalers is a leading indicator to what it's going to be for us 3 to 6 months down the road. So yesterday it came out that inflation has hit us now to the tune of 7.5%. It's gone up yet again another month. Last month we were talking about this, and it was 7%. That was a 40-year high, 7.5%, a new 40-year high, highest since 1982, the year I graduated from high school. Says a lot. Yeah, it's been a while. So that's retail inflation. Wholesale inflation currently is double digits.
Oh, jeez.
So that's what's coming at us. All right. So that's not going away, and it's just going to put added pressure on everything. Not enough. You mentioned interest rates and where they're headed, right? So the Fed has recently come out and said they are going to be increasing interest rates most likely 8 or 9 times in the next 2 years. Now just kind of let that settle for a minute. I mean, what do you think? What comes to mind for you, Eric, when I say that?
Well, I'm a numbers guy, so the first thing I think of is that's a lot of adjustments, or that's a lot of increases. But my brain immediately goes to how much are each one of those increases, because I'm sure they probably haven't released that, or have they?
Well, no, they never release anything till the day of.
Exactly,
but,
right.
The minimum increase is a quarter, right?
Oh.
And so, but I just heard literally I had to run out of the office earlier. On my way back to the office, I just heard a gentleman on Fox News, economist, talking about interest rates. And he said he expects the first of those increases in March to be no less than a 0.5% increase. But even if it was just a quarter, 8 times, that's 2% in 2 years.
Yeah.
Now, for those that don't know numerically what that does to businesses and individuals, it's painful. And the markets they forecast out what the markets are doing today. They're forecasting out 6 to 12 months, right? And so that being said, if they forecast that interest rates are going to be going up, it's going to be eating into the earnings reports for these companies 6 to 12 months from now, and they're going to not like, the markets aren't going to like that. And so they're going to react usually negatively to interest rate increases, not to mention how much more it's going to cost to buy a home, yada, yada, et cetera, right? Mm-hmm. So there's that. Then there's the oil price per barrel. And you'd think I'd run out of stuff here in a minute, wouldn't you? The oil price per barrel, I'm just going to look while we're talking here, it's gone up $2 since I looked 30 minutes ago. It's currently, as we speak, almost $94 a barrel. Mm. Now, in March of 2020, it was $10 a barrel. 10.
Jeez.
So the last time that was north of $100 a barrel was 2008. We know what happened that year. Mm-hmm.
You're just full of good news today, my man.
It's just logic.
No,
okay?
I know, and I appreciate that.
We're just trying to throw this together, and I feel like I'm on a mission. I feel like that it's my purpose to help people get real information that they can act on. But here's the one that got me, and this just happened just in the last 2 weeks. So if you add all that up, and I've been watching all of that, right? And you know that. You've heard me mention some of these things before, and I've been watching all that for a while. And it causes me to be more careful as I'm discussing this with folks. But here's the one that is really, as my dad used to say, where the rubber meets the road. So if you took the S&P 500 price and you took that back 200 days, every single day that the market was open, and what was the closing price of the S&P 500 for every one of those days, it would give you 200 data points. And then you average those, and it gives you what's called a 200-day moving average. And so if that average is slowly moving up over time, that's a really positive thing, right? And it'll be a slow, gradual increase because it's such a long time frame average down. So one of the classic signs, warning signs that a lot of advisors use, myself included, is when the current index price, today's price, for example. So for the S&P 500, for example, today's price, as I'm looking at it right now, is $44.39. Okay? So when that price drops below the 200-day moving average, because it's got to move pretty quick, right, to go below a 200-day moving average. When that happens, that is a classic warning sign that it may be the beginning of something significant negative. Because in a healthy market, when the price falls down to that average, then large investors see that as a buying opportunity. They scoop up stocks, and it bounces off of that line, and it heads back to positive territory again, right? But in a negative market, it falls below that and then starts to bounce off the bottom of that line. Because large wholesale investors are seeing that as a selling opportunity, right? And so on about 2 weeks ago, for the first time in a long time, that all three indexes fell below their 200-day moving average. And then it kind of found its way right back above again, just barely above. And then today, about 2 weeks later, it has fallen below again as we speak. And so that was enough for me to say, okay, I need to not only to start talking more about this, but I immediately started getting on the phone with my clients as well. Mm-hmm. And you know me, I don't have any clients that have the lion's share of their money in the markets, but even the amounts that they have, it's my job to try to help them protect it. So I've started getting on the phones with them and talking more about that. So back to my original point, which is, what is your warning sign? Is your warning sign just say, I'm in this for the long haul, I'm just going to ride it out? But why? Why do you need to ride it out? That's like saying, I know things aren't going well with my boss, and I know he's going to fire me here sometime soon, but I guess when he fires me, I'll deal with it. It just doesn't, that's not logical.
Yeah.
Right? And there's people that do that, but go ahead.
But John, I think that a lot of that comes from people are inundated by the media. And again, I'm not trying to put a black eye on the media, but come on, they're there to sell advertising. If you're listening to a radio station, you're watching a TV channel, all of them have to sell advertising to stay afloat. That's why I love podcasting. I love podcasts themselves, because this isn't commercial. This isn't something where, there's sponsors and you've got to sell space and you've got to, get people to listen or else you don't get paid. That's not how this works. You do this because you want to educate folks. But in the media, you hear, well, you don't want to react emotionally. You just stick it out. Because if you act emotionally and you pull all your money out, then you lose all that upside, which is true if you're trying to time the markets, right? But I think that is a message people have heard for so long that at that point, they're like, no, I think I'm supposed to let it ride. And I think that's a gambling thing, but I just let it ride. But I know that there's other strategies out there, because you've spoken about things before on the podcast. I'm assuming that you're kind of leading to that as well.
Well, you said two really key things there. Thank you. Phil, first of all, you know what percentage of wealthy folks gamble?
I would guess and gamble to say. I'm just kidding. Low percentage.
Make a guess.
Oh, I'll say 4%.
Yeah, it's gamble ever. 23%.
Okay, got it.
54% of poor gamble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there you go. If you were to say, if I look up the percentages, and I have before, the percentage of wealthy individuals that have what of their wealth is in the markets it's really, really low. I think the last time I looked, don't quote me, I think it was somewhere around 5%. Because that's where they make their wealth, right? So they do that for fun. It's like gambling, right, to them.
Yeah.
So, but the other thing, you talked about was the fear of loss. Mm-hmm. Okay, if I get out and the market goes up, I've lost that. And I hear that a lot. I used to hear it a lot. I don't hear it as much anymore. So when people say that, I ask them this question. So, because if you ask this question to a 55-year-old or a 65-year-old, you might get a different answer than if you ask a 25-year-old. But I ask them, well, okay, well, what would make you feel worse then if you got out of the markets today and in the next year the market went up 50%? And what do you think are the odds of that today? Mm-hmm. Or you stayed in and the next year the market's dropped 50%, which is going to make you feel worse. And every single time they say the latter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I said, then why are you still in?
Yeah.
Why are you still in 100%? Because you logically just answered that question. Mm-hmm. It was a logical response based on math, based on numbers. So you know the answer, but yet you've been programmed, I think that's what you were kind of saying, programmed, whether it's by the media or whatever else it might be, to just hang in there. Well, that's good for who? It's good for everybody but you.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and to be fair, the situation I brought up was more speaking to the fact that somebody's already taken a pretty good loss, like March of 2020, where the market dipped down 35% or whatever it was. And mm-hmm. if they had pulled out everything then yes, they would have lost that upswing. But what you're talking about today is looking ahead, looking
mm-hmm.
at all the signs and logically mm-hmm. saying, maybe we begin to pull back now because we're not at a dip right now, mm-mm. right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's a completely different message, which I really appreciate. And I know that your audience does too, but yeah, that's interesting.
So when I call my clients, I talk to them and we just talk logically again. And I don't try to force them to do anything, as I never do. But I say, listen, we've got two choices here. We can kind of pull out, sit on the sidelines for a few months, and let's just kind of wait and see what happens. Yeah, worst case scenario, it blows up. We miss 3 months. Mm-hmm. But if the signs improve over a 3-month period, we can jump back in and get right back on board. But what if they don't? Mm-hmm. I'm not even talking about the Russia mess right now. I'm not even talking about the messes we don't even know that are coming in the next 3 months, because there seems to be new ones every week anymore. But what is 2 or 3 months of our life just to see, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It baffles me, and I'm really into human behavior, and it just kind of baffles me sometimes as to how individuals process information and how they think. And I think, what's that old movie, WALL-E? You remember that movie, WALL-E?
Yeah.
I feel like more and more every year we're moving actually towards that being somewhat of a reality, where everybody's just kind of scooting around on their carts, and mm-hmm. we're getting heavier and more obese, and we just kind of we just go through the day doing what we're told to do. We don't really have any thoughts of ourselves or mm-hmm. of our own. And so I'm on this warpath to try to help people get back to thinking for themselves. Some people, for guys, we call it our gut. For women, we call it our instinct. I call it God's promptings. But mm-hmm. when's the last time, or how many times in the last year have you had that gut instinct and you think, man, this is what I need to do, and you don't do it, and then you go back and say, oh man, I should have done that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, how many times in our life?
Yeah.
And to the point, my wife hears me saying, I don't know how many times a year now, doggone it, this is what I'm feeling, and this is what my gut's telling me, this is what I'm going to do, because mm-hmm. this is what the logic says that I should do.
Yeah.
Because I got tired of doing it my way instead of God's way and messing up. So, mm-hmm. I'm trying to be a better listener now. But, it really is, at the end of the day, Eric, and then, we can kind of chat about this and close this out. I didn't mean for this to be a long podcast by any stretch of imagination, but, I just try to send a message that, man, I encourage everybody out there to start thinking for themselves. Let's just not take everything that we hear or read, especially not coming from the media, and believe that. It's kind of time we start standing up for what is good and what is true and what is right and what is best for us and our families and others, right?
Yeah.
So, your thoughts on any of that?
I think it's brilliant, and it's not necessarily groundbreaking, John. You're just actually stating facts, stating data. Here's what I'm seeing. These are my concerns. This is what I'm personally doing about it. This is what I'm personally talking to my clients about. But it's very refreshing because hardly anybody does that, right? More people that I know that are on podcasts that, have a financial stance, it's what's going on now, what we're going to do to make sure that we're okay at this moment, but it's not forward thinking. It's like we're reacting to what has already happened or what's happening currently in the market. And then by that time it's too late. And so I love the fact that you're bringing up all these different things, just saying, look, here's the data. I can't tell you if this is going to happen next month or in 2 months or in 3 months, but all the signs are kind of pointing in this direction, and those are the signs I'm not willing to ignore. So I love that.
Well, that's awesome. And you said it best. No, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what the markets are going to do in this situation. I just know what they've done in previous situations that look like this one.
Yeah.
And that's the message here today.
Absolutely. Well, I love the message. Thank you so much for sharing it with the audience.
You're so welcome. Always love it.
Yep. And I hope you as the audience are enjoying this journey with John and myself. I know that I'm learning a lot, and we do want to thank you for joining and listening to the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when John comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it really easy to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And if you're interested in reaching out to John and having a conversation, you can find contact information in the show notes. You can also go to his website. John, can you remind him what the website is?
It is Biltmore, Biltmore -financial.com.
Perfect. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at the Secrets of the Wealthy, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Secrets of the Wealthy podcast with John Mintz. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of John Mintz. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.